When you look back at the topography of 1990s rock music, specifically that seismic shift we call grunge, it really does look like a battlefield in hindsight.
It does.
It was a cultural revolution, absolutely. It just completely replaced the hairspray and, the excess of the 80s with flannel, with distortion, and this this really distinct brand of raw, bleeding heart authenticity.
Hmm.
But when you look at the generals of that revolution, the big four bands, there's this haunting realization that you just can't shake.
Right. Kurt Cobain is gone.
Gone.
Lane Staley is gone.
Gone.
Chris Cornell is gone.
It is a heavy legacy. I mean, we often romanticize the artistic output of that era, and we should, but the casualty rate among its leading men was it was devastatingly high.
It was. It was a time of incredibly intense expression, but also incredibly intense self-destruction.
Exactly. But there is one figure, one person standing at the center of that storm who didn't just survive the wreckage.
Yeah.
He managed to evolve into something completely different.
Yeah.
He went from being this shy, angry kid, literally climbing the stage, rigging, risking his life every night, to becoming an elder statesman, a dedicated political activist, and a global icon who is still filling stadiums today.
We're talking, of course, about Eddie Vedder.
Of course. And that word survival is really the lens through which we have to view his entire career, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. This isn't just a story about a guy who sang in a famous band. This is more like a case study on how to navigate sudden, crushing fame without losing your mind.
Or your life.
Or your life.
Yeah.
It's about someone who looked directly into the abyss that consumed so many of his peers and just found a way to build a bridge over it.
So today we are doing a massive deep dive into a really comprehensive profile of Vedder. We aren't just skimming the hits. We are going to look at the Mama-Son tape that started it all.
Which is an incredible story in itself.
It's unbelievable. And we're going to look at the intense war he waged against the music industry and the personal tragedies that really reshaped his entire worldview.
We have a lot of ground to cover. We need to analyze the psychological weight of his childhood in Illinois, the surfing epiphany in San Diego that honestly changed music history.
It really did.
And how he pivoted from being the reluctant face of a generation to being a private citizen who just happens to be a rock star.
So the mission for this deep dive is to find the man behind that baritone voice. How did a surfer working the night shift at a gas station end up fronting the biggest band in the world?
And maybe more importantly,
Yeah.
once he got there, why did he try so hard to dismantle the very machine that made him famous?
That's the core question.
To answer that, I think we have to start with the concept of identity. Because for the first, the most formative portion of his life, Eddie Vedder didn't even know who he really was.
Right. He wasn't born Eddie Vedder. That name came much, much later.
Not at all. He was born Edward Louis Severson III.
Yeah.
This was in Evanston, Illinois, back in 1964. But the defining event of his early life, the thing that shaped everything, happened before he could even form memories. His biological father, Edward Severson Jr., and his mother, Karen, they divorced in 1965. Eddie was just an infant.
A baby, yeah.
And his mother quickly remarried a man named Peter Mueller.
And this is where the deception begins. It's kind of the original sin of his biography in a way.
That's a perfect way to put it,
Yeah.
Precisely. Eddie was raised believing that Peter Mueller was his biological father. He grew up as Edward Mueller.
Wow.
And this wasn't just, a passive omission where they just didn't talk about it. It was an active construction of a reality that wasn't true. He built his entire childhood identity around this man being his dad.
And the home environment itself in Evanston sounds incredibly complex. I mean, the source material mentions that the family fostered children, which is something I hadn't realized before.
Yes, and not just one or two. They fostered 7 younger children in a group home setting. 7. Now, just pause and think about the psychology of that for a young boy. You're living in a house that is, by its very nature, transient. It's filled with other kids coming and going.
Right.
You're navigating this chaotic family structure where attention is, the very scarce resource. It just creates a baseline of instability.
It's almost like a crowded loneliness. You're surrounded by people, but your own place in the hierarchy must have been so confusing. And then in the mid-70s, the family just uproots and moves.
They moved to San Diego County. And this move is absolutely critical because it introduces the 2 pillars that would essentially save his life later on.
Music and the ocean.
Music in the ocean. He gets a guitar from his mother for his 12th birthday. And there's this quote where he reflects on this time, saying, "When I was around 15 or 16, I was all alone except for music."
And he gravitated toward Quadrophenia by The Who, which if you know that album, is so, so telling.
Oh, it's a roadmap.
It's a rock opera about a teenager with a split personality, dealing with angst and fashion, and just trying to belong. It's basically the soundtrack for an identity crisis.
It was the perfect mirror for what he was about to experience, because in his late teens, the floor just completely fell out from under him.
Okay.
His mother and his stepfather, Peter Mueller, they get a divorce. His mother moves back to the Chicago area, but Eddie stays behind in California. He wants to finish high school.
So he's on his own.
He's living independently, trying to find his footing. And that is when his mother drops the bomb.
The truth comes out.
She tells him that Peter Mueller was not his father. His real father was a man named Edward Severson Jr. But the revelation came with a second, just crushing blow.
What was that?
She told him, "You actually met him once."
Wait, what? He had met his biological father without even knowing it? That sounds like something out of a Dickens novel.
It's unbelievable. He'd been introduced to him as a child, but he was told this man was just a family friend of his parents, just an acquaintance he saw briefly.
So he has this fractured memory of a man he didn't know was his father.
Exactly. And then came the final piece of the tragedy. By the time he learned the truth, Edward Severson Jr. was already dead.
Oh, no.
He had died of multiple sclerosis.
That is a Greek tragedy level of irony. I mean, you're handed your identity and your grief in the exact same sentence. Here's who you are, and oh, by the way, you will never get to explore it because he is gone.
It's a really unique form of trauma. It's like grieving a ghost. You're not missing a relationship you had. You're mourning the impossibility of ever having one.
Right.
And for you listening, if you're a fan of Pearl Jam, this story isn't just, biographical trivia. This narrative is the literal architecture of the song Alive.
Son, she said, have I got a little story for you?
That's it. It is almost a transcript of that conversation.
Yeah.
Vedder didn't just write a song about generic teen angst. He wrote a journalistic account of the moment his entire life fractured. And that trauma became the engine for his art.
It gave him this depth of pain that just resonated with millions of people, even if they didn't know the specific details.
Exactly.
But before the art could pay the bills, he had to survive the economics of just being a teenager on his own. The sources really paint a picture of a guy who was grinding, not some privileged kid playing rock star.
He was. The pressure of supporting himself financially while trying to finish school was just too much. He actually dropped out of San Diego High School.
During his senior year, right?
During his senior year.
Yeah.
Because he was working the night shift at a drugstore in Encinitas just to pay rent on an apartment. He couldn't balance the school books and the financial books, so to speak.
I think that's such an important detail because later when he becomes this huge rock star, people can forget that he wasn't handed anything. He was a working class guy.
Absolutely. He eventually got his GED from Oakton Community College.
Yeah.
But yeah, he worked as a security guard at a hotel. He pumped gas.
He was a laborer.
A laborer. And that blue-collar ethic never really left him. Even on stage, he always looked like he had just come from a shift at the warehouse,
Yeah, totally.
And during this time, he changed his last name to Vedder, which was his mother's maiden name, as a way to reclaim some sense of identity. In the late 80s, he's back in San Diego, and he's just immersing himself in the local music scene.
He was in a few bands with some great names. Surf and Destroy. The Butts.
The Butts is a classic garage band name. But the serious project, the one that got him some attention, was a band called Bad Radio.
And they were described as progressive funk rock, which was very much the flavor of the time in Southern California.
Oh, yeah, you're thinking Red Hot Chili Peppers, Fishbone, that whole scene.
But Vedder wasn't really a funk guy, was he? At his core.
Not at his core, no. Yeah. The sources say he was pushing them toward a more alternative, a harder sound. You can kind of see his artistic compass was already pointing north towards Seattle, even if he didn't know it yet.
He had a heavier, darker sensibility?
He did. It didn't quite fit with the upbeat funk vibes. And speaking of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, there is a crucial connection here that changes everything. And it involves Jack Irons.
The drummer.
Right, the former drummer for the Chili Peppers. He and Eddie struck up a friendship in the San Diego scene. They'd play basketball together. And in 1990, Jack Irons basically becomes the conduit for Destiny. He hands Eddie a cassette tape.
This is it, the Mama Son tape. This is legendary stuff. It's like the Excalibur of grunge history.
It really is. So Irons had received this demo tape from some guys in Seattle, Stone Gossard and Jeff Ament.
From Mother Love Bone?
Well, formerly of Mother Love Bone. They had just been through their own massive tragedy. Their band was poised to be the next big thing, but their lead singer, Andrew Wood, had just died of a heroin overdose.
Right.
So they were grieving, but they were looking for a new vocalist to try and keep the music going. Irons was supposed to pass the tape to another singer, but he gave it to Vedder instead.
So let's set the scene. Eddie is working the graveyard shift at a gas station. He's listening to these instrumental tracks, and they're heady, they're moody, complex rock music. And then he goes surfing.
And the ocean provides the breakthrough. Vedder says the lyrics just came to him while he was out in the water, sitting on his board, dealing with the cold and the fog.
Wow.
He rushed back from the beach, still wet, and recorded the vocals. But here's the key thing. He didn't just write 3 separate songs. He wrote a mini-opera.
This is the Mama-san trilogy. We're talking Alive, Once, and Footsteps. We've already touched on Alive being autobiographical, but how did the other 2 fit into this opera concept?
This is where his creative genius just explodes. He took his real life, the boy discovering the lie about his father, which is alive, and then he fictionalized the aftermath to explore the darkness.
Okay, so he's building a narrative.
A very dark one.
Yeah.
In the second song, Once, the lead character snaps under the weight of that trauma and becomes a serial killer. The lyrics are incredibly violent and disturbed. Then in the third song, Footsteps, the character's in prison. He's on death row, awaiting execution, and he's looking back on what went wrong.
So he processed his own trauma by taking it to its absolute darkest, most violent, logical extreme in fiction.
Exactly.
That's catharsis through storytelling. He's saying this pain could make someone crazy, and then he writes the story of the person who actually went crazy.
Precisely. It was a way for him to exorcise the demons without becoming them. So he records these vocals over the instrumental tracks, dubs the tape, and mails it back to Seattle.
Now, you have to imagine being Stone Gossard and Jeff Ament. You are grieving Andrew Wood, who was this flamboyant, glam rock frontman, very colorful, very extroverted.
A completely different energy.
And you pop in a cassette from some random surfer in San Diego, and out comes that voice.
It must have been shocking. I mean, it was deep, it was resonant, and it possessed a gravity that Andrew Wood never had. It wasn't just an audition tape.
Yeah.
It was a fully realized artistic statement.
They were instantly impressed.
By the unique sound, the emotional weight, all of it. They flew him up to Seattle immediately.
And this leads to a moment that I think is the real birth of Eddie Vedder as we know him. It happens before Pearl Jam is even fully formed. We're talking about the Temple of the Dog project.
This is such crucial context. So Temple of the Dog was a tribute album for Andrew Wood, organized by Chris Cornell of Soundgarden.
A super group of Seattle musicians.
Right. And Vedder arrives in town. He's the new guy. He's shy. He doesn't know anybody.
And he's walking into a room full of people who have known each other for years and are all mourning a best friend. That is a tough room to work. You're the outsider stepping into a wake.
It is a very tough room. But then comes the hunger strike session.
Yeah.
Chris Cornell had written this song, and he was struggling to record the vocals. He had this idea for a duet in his head, a low vocal and a high vocal, but he was trying to sing both parts himself.
And he couldn't do it.
He was running out of breath. He couldn't make the transition from the low register to the high one fast enough.
And Eddie is just sitting in the back of the rehearsal space, just waiting for his own band to practice.
He is. He's just watching. But he sees Cornell struggling. And without being asked, without any ego, he walks up to the microphone.
And starts singing.
And starts singing the low part. I don't mind stealing bread. Just that deep, rumbling baritone.
And Cornell, who had one of the greatest rock voices in history, he just instinctively takes the high harmony.
Instantly. Cornell later said he was completely amazed because Eddie sang it exactly the way he had heard it in his head. It was pure musical instinct.
That moment feels like a knighting ceremony. You have Chris Cornell, who is basically the king of Seattle at that point, validating the new kid. Mike McCready, Pearl Jam's guitarist, said Cornell essentially gave Vedder his blessing right then and there.
It forged a bond between them that was incredibly deep. Cornell became like an older brother to Vedder. And for the rest of the Seattle scene, it signaled that this guy from San Diego, he belonged. It wasn't just about talent. It was about musical empathy.
So the band forms. They originally call themselves Mookie Blaylock, after the NBA player, which is just peak 90s humor.
It really is.
But when they sign to Epic Records, they have to change the name. They go with Pearl Jam. And as a nod to Mookie, they title their debut album 10, which was his jersey number.
And 10. Well, it's really hard to overstate the cultural footprint of that album.
It's
It went
mass.
13 times platinum.
Yeah.
It remains one of the highest-selling rock albums of all time.
Alive, Even Flow, Black, Jeremy was just hit after hit after hit. And specifically, the Jeremy video. That video was absolutely everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
It won Video of the Year at the MTV VMAs. Eddie Vedder's face, those intense wide eyes, it became the face of rock music for a solid year.
And that is exactly when the trouble started, because Eddie Vedder did not want to be the face of anything.
This is the recoil. We see this happen with artists, but usually they lean into the fame or they complain about it, but they keep cashing the checks.
Right.
Vedder ran the other way. Fast.
He felt the pressure physically. He's spoken about how disturbing it was when fans would come up to him thinking he could save their lives or, fix their problems. He called them impossible expectations.
He was terrified.
Terrified that the fame was going to hollow him out and turn him into a product. He hated the commodification of his own emotions.
So the band adopts this strategy of withdrawal. And this is fascinating because it goes against every single rule of capitalism in the music industry. They stopped making music videos.
Just think about the magnitude of that decision for a second. They had just won Video of the Year. They were the darlings of MTV. And they just said, nope, we are never doing that again.
No videos for V's or Vitology.
None. They refused to do press. They just wanted the music to be the only thing that mattered.
They were trying to cool down the heat. But then they took it a step further. They decided to go to war with the very infrastructure of the touring industry itself.
The Ticketmaster battle.
The Ticketmaster battle. This defines the mid-90s for Pearl Jam.
Absolutely. In 1994, the band discovers that Ticketmaster is adding these service fees to their tickets that the band felt were just exploitative. They wanted to keep ticket prices low, for the working class fans.
Right.
When Ticketmaster refused to budge, Pearl Jam canceled their entire summer tour and filed a complaint with the U.S. Justice Department, alleging a monopoly.
They tried to tour without Ticketmaster. They were playing in fairgrounds, parks, these random venues. It was a logistical nightmare.
It was complete chaos.
Yeah.
And frankly, they lost a lot of money. They couldn't tour efficiently for 3 years. But it cemented their reputation as a band with unshakable integrity.
It showed the fans, we care more about your wallet than our own.
100%. But that integrity, it came with a cost inside the band, too. We have to talk about the firing of Dave Abruzzi.
The drummer, right. He was the drummer during the explosion. He played on V's and Vitology.
He did. But he was a bit more of a rock star type.
Yeah.
He enjoyed the fame, he drove a nice car, and crucially, he did not agree with the Ticketmaster boycott.
He thought it was hurting the band.
He thought it was damaging their career.
Yeah.
So you have this philosophical split. You have Vedder, who is trying to deconstruct the fame, and Abruzzi, who's basically saying, why are we making this so hard on ourselves?
And Vedder won that argument.
He did. Abruzzi was fired in August of 1994. And who did they bring in to replace him?
Jack Irons.
Jack Irons. The friend who gave Eddie the tape in the first place? It brought the circle all the way back to that original connection. It was Vedder securing his vision for what the band should be.
You can hear this turmoil in the music from that period. Vedder's was so aggressive, almost like an animal backed into a corner.
Yeah.
And then Vitology was frantic and weird and almost claustrophobic. And Vedder started playing rhythm guitar more, pushing for a punkier, roarer sound.
By the time they get to albums like No Code and Yield, Vedder is explicitly trying to make the music less catchy. He actually said, if we get any bigger, our heads are going to pop like grapes. He wanted to shed the bandwagon fans. He wanted to shrink the audience down to a manageable size so they could survive. He was actively sabotaging his own commercial appeal to save his soul.
He even tried to hide his name. I mean, he used pseudonyms in the liner notes like Jerome Turner for his artwork.
In West Seattle,
He
was trying to disappear into the background. But interestingly, as he pulled back from the Pearl Jam machine, he found a new way to express himself that was actually safer for him.
Soundtracks.
This makes perfect sense, right? When you're doing a soundtrack, you are serving a story. You're not selling Eddie Vedder.
It liberated him.
Completely. He did that amazing work for Dead Man Walking with Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, blending rock with Qawwali music. He covered the Beatles for I Am Sam. But the masterpiece of this era for him as a solo artist has to be Into the Wild.
The Sean Penn film from 2007.
It is the perfect marriage of artist and subject. The story of Christopher McCandless, this young man who just walks away from society, burns his money, and goes to live in the Alaskan wilderness.
It's the ultimate escape.
It mirrors Vedder's own desire to escape the machinery of the modern world.
And the soundtrack is so stripped back, it's folk music. It's just Eddie and a guitar or a mandolin.
And it won him a Golden Globe for the song Guaranteed. It proved that he could carry a project entirely on his own without the volume and the weight of Pearl Jam. It was vulnerable and intimate.
A huge moment for him.
A pivotal moment where he stepped out as a songwriter, not just a frontman.
And he doubled down on that intimacy with ukulele songs in 2011. Which, I have to say, if you told a grunge fan in 1992 that the guy screaming Jeremy would one day release an entire ukulele album...
They would have laughed you out of the room.
Absolutely.
But it shows his confidence. He no longer needed to scream to be heard. He had nothing left to prove. He could sit on a stool with his tiny instrument and still completely command the room.
We've talked about his music, but we can't fully understand Vedder without looking at his activism. He has never, ever been the shut up and sing type.
Never. Not for a second. He views the microphone as a responsibility. If you have the attention of millions of people, you have to say something that matters.
You can go all the way back to 1992 to their MTV Unplugged performance.
One of the most famous performances ever.
During the song Porch, he gets up, he climbs up on his stool, pulls out a magic marker, and just writes pro-choice on his arm in massive black letters for the cameras.
He was literally branding himself with his politics on a global stage. And he followed that up with an essay for Spin magazine called Reclamation, all about abortion rights. But his activism goes much deeper than just slogans. He puts in the work. You have to look at the West Memphis 3 case.
This was the case where 3 teenagers in Arkansas were convicted of murder, and the conviction was based largely on the fact that they were outcasts who wore black and listened to heavy metal.
It was a modern-day witch hunt.
And Vedder saw himself in those kids. He saw how society demonizes the outsider.
He became a massive supporter of their legal defense. But he went further than that. He actually befriended Damien Echols, the one who was on death row.
I didn't know that.
They collaborated on a song, Army Reserve. They were sending tapes back and forth while Echols was still in prison.
That's a serious dedication. And he was there when they were finally released in 2011, right?
He was at the hearing. It wasn't a photo op for him. It was a decade-long commitment to justice.
And then there's his charity work.
He also co-founded the EB Research Partnership with his wife, Jill McCormick. Epidermolysis bullosa is this horrific genetic skin condition that affects children. Their skin is as fragile as a butterfly's wings.
It's awful.
Vedder has helped raise over $25 million for research into a cure. This is the shift. This is the angry young man becoming the responsible elder. He's using his accumulated power to affect tangible change in the world.
Now, we do have to touch on the personal tragedies, because while he survived the pressures of fame, he couldn't stop death from happening around him. And the most public of these was the Roskilde Festival in 2000.
It's the darkest day in Pearl Jam's history, June 30, 2000. In Denmark. The band was playing their set, the crowd surged forward in the mud, and 9 fans were crushed to death.
It's an absolute nightmare to be standing on stage realizing that the joy you were trying to create is turning into a tragedy right in front of you.
And the timing was just heartbreaking. Vedder had been told moments before the set that Chris Cornell's daughter had just been born.
Oh, wow.
So he was celebrating new life, and then an hour later, he was witnessing mass death.
That kind of emotional whiplash, I mean, how do you even begin to recover from that?
It nearly broke the band. They seriously considered quitting. They felt responsible, even though an investigation cleared them of any wrongdoing.
It changed everything.
It changed them forever.
Yeah.
They had to completely rethink how they toured, demanding these strict new safety protocols from venues. Vedder said he leaned heavily on his friend Pete Townsend of The Who during that time.
The Who connection just keeps coming up. He's a real mentor figure for him.
He really is. In fact, way back in 1993, when Vedder was completely overwhelmed by fame and was contemplating, suicide or just quitting, it was Pete Townsend who talked him off the ledge.
Really?
Yeah. He told him to keep going, that his voice was important.
It's amazing to see that lineage one generation's icon saving the next. But sadly, Vedder couldn't save everyone. The death of Chris Cornell in 2017.
That was the blow that really shook the foundation. Cornell was the older brother. He was the one who welcomed Eddie to Seattle. With Cornell gone and Lane Staley and Kurt Cobain already gone, Vedder was suddenly the last man standing of that specific brotherhood.
It must be an incredibly lonely position to be in, to be at the top of that mountain, all by yourself.
I can't imagine. He has spoken about the grief, saying he'll love Cornell forever. It's just A profound loss.
But to end on a slightly lighter note, there's one place where it seems like Eddie finds pure, unadulterated joy.
Wrigley Field.
The Chicago Cubs. He is a diehard superfan.
He is. He sang Take Me Out to the Ball Game during the World Series. He wrote a tribute song called All the Way for the legendary Ernie Banks.
And when the Cubs finally won the World Series in 2016, Eddie was right there on the field celebrating with them.
It connects him all the way back to his childhood in Evanston. It humanizes him. He's not a rock god in that moment. He's just a guy who loves his baseball team.
I love the concept of the Vedder Cup, too.
Yes. The nickname for the baseball series between the Seattle Mariners and the San Diego Padres.
Because he has deep roots in both cities.
Exactly. The fans call it the Vedder Cup. It's just this great little nod to his dual identity.
So here we are in the 2020s. Eddie Vedder is now in his 60s. He's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Rolling Stone ranks him as the 7th best lead singer of all time. But what is the real legacy here? What's the final takeaway?
I think the legacy is that he provided a blueprint for integrity in an industry that doesn't often reward it. He showed that you can reach the absolute pinnacle of commercial success without selling your soul.
He fought to get master before anyone else did. He supported causes before they were trendy. And he kept his band together. Pearl Jam is still touring, still making vital music. That longevity is incredibly rare.
He refused to become a casualty. He refused to let the myth of the tortured artist kill the actual man.
Exactly. He is the survivor who learned how to live.
So I want to leave you with this final thought. Go all the way back to that Mama Son tape, the surfing epiphany.
Okay.
Vedder took the most painful fact of his life, the death of a father he never knew, and he turned it into alive. He used art to process the poison. If he hadn't found that outlet, if he hadn't written those songs, would he have had the emotional tools to survive everything that came later?
That's the ultimate question, isn't it? Did writing alive actually, literally, keep him alive?
It's something to think about.
Eddie Vedder.
The Survivor, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It was a pleasure.
We'll catch you next time.